Picture this. You are standing on the deck of a container ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It is 3 in the morning, and the wave coming toward you is taller than a 10-story building. You can hear it before you see it. A deep, low rumble that you feel in your chest before your eyes can even process what's happening. And then it hits. The entire ship, all 220,000 tons of it, tilts sideways like a bathtub toy. Containers groan. Metal screams. The ocean pours across the deck. And for 3 full seconds, you genuinely do not know if this ship is going to come back upright. But then, slowly, it does. And that moment right there is what this video is about. Because by every law of physics, your brain understands that ship should have flipped over. And the fact that it didn't. That is one of the most incredible engineering stories hidden inside modern civilization. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will never look at the ocean the same way again. Let's start with the obvious question. Why does a container ship even look unstable in the first place? Because when you actually see one up close, the answer is immediately terrifying. A fully loaded container ship carries its cargo stacked above the waterline, layer after layer after layer of steel boxes, rising nearly 200 feet into the air. That is taller than many skyscrapers. And inside those containers, this isn't empty space. This is electronics, machinery, vehicles, steel parts, chemicals, enormous concentrated weight sitting high above the ocean surface. Now think about what you learned as a kid about balance. High weight equals instability. If you stack books on top of a pencil, it falls. If you put a brick on top of a soda can, it crushes. Everything your brain understands about physics tells you that a tall, top-heavy object will tip over. And yet, container ships don't. Even in storms violent enough to produce waves the height of apartment buildings. So, either physics is wrong, or something else is happening that most people never think about. And that something else is hidden completely out of sight. Here is what almost nobody outside the shipping industry actually knows. The containers you see stacked on top of the ship, they are not the heaviest part. Not even close. Because deep below the waterline, in a place you will never see in any photo or video, sits the real weight of the ship. The engine room, fuel tanks, ballast tanks, pumps, generators, and thousands upon thousands of tons of solid steel structure, forming the ship's hull. Let me give you a number that will make this feel real. The largest marine diesel engines in the world, the kind used in these ships, can weigh over 2,000 metric tons by themselves. Some of them are taller than a 4-story building, and all of that mass sits as low as physically possible inside the hull. This creates what naval engineers call a low center of gravity. And that changes everything. Think about a punching bag. You can hit it as hard as you want. You can shove it sideways. You can swing it violently. But it always swings back upright. Why? Because most of its weight is concentrated near the bottom. A container ship uses the exact same principle, just on a scale that is almost impossible to imagine. That enormous hidden mass deep below the waterline acts like a giant counterweight buried beneath the ocean surface. So, while the containers on top look terrifying, the real story of why this ship stays upright is happening somewhere you cannot see. But that is only half the answer. Because the hull itself is doing something even more impressive. Modern container ships are not just heavy at the bottom. They are also extraordinarily wide. Some of the largest vessels on Earth are wider than a football field is long. And that width is not an accident. It is not for storage. It is not for aesthetics. It exists for one specific reason: to spread buoyancy across the largest possible area of water. And here is where real physics gets genuinely fascinating. The moment a ship begins to tilt, even slightly, the underwater shape of its hull changes. One side sinks deeper into the water. The opposite side rises higher. That shift changes how water pushes upward against the hull. And as the buoyant force moves sideways, it creates a powerful rotational force, a force that is constantly, aggressively, trying to push the ship back upright. Naval engineers call this the righting moment. And the further a ship tilts, the stronger this force becomes. Think about that for a second. The more the ocean tries to tip the ship over, the harder physics pushes back. It is like the ship has an invisible hand underneath it, fighting to stay upright. Every single moment, it is at sea. Before any container ship ever enters the ocean, our naval architects run thousands of simulations. They model massive waves, violent rolling, shifting cargo loads, calculating exactly how the vessel will behave in the worst conditions imaginable. Because stability at sea is not guesswork. It is mathematics. But even with perfect engineering, storms create one more terrifying problem that no amount of hull design can fully solve. Imagine this scenario. You are crossing the North Atlantic in the middle of winter. A massive storm system has built waves over 50 feet high. And suddenly, thousands of heavy steel containers begin shifting sideways. Just a few inches at first, then a foot, then more. That weight transfer rate, happening high above the waterline, could flip a ship in minutes. This is the nightmare that cargo securing engineers spend their entire careers trying to prevent. And the system they built to stop it is more impressive than most people realize. Every single container on a modern ship is locked in place using specialized steel devices called twist locks. These are not simple bolts. They are precision-engineered locking mechanisms that connect containers to each other and to the ship's structure at every single corner. On top of that, massive steel rods called lashing bars run diagonally across entire stacks of containers, pulling them together so tightly that a stack of 10 boxes behaves almost like a single solid structure. Without these systems, the ship would be catastrophically vulnerable in any serious storm. And even with them, containers are still occasionally lost at sea during extreme weather. But here is the critical difference. Losing containers is not the same as losing the ship. Because the ship is designed to survive conditions that go far beyond what any of those containers are rated for. Which brings us to something that completely changed how I thought about ships. Most people assume that surviving a massive storm means being strong enough to resist it. That a ship survives by being harder and more powerful than the waves hitting it. That assumption is completely wrong. A container ship does not fight the ocean. It moves with it. During a massive storm, the hull of a container ship flexes. It bends. It rolls. It rises and falls with each incoming wave, rather than trying to hold a rigid position against it. And this is intentional. A completely rigid ship, a ship that refused to flex, would actually crack apart under the stress of extreme ocean conditions. Some of the largest vessels can flex and bend several feet along their length. in extreme seas. The steel itself stretches and compresses millions of times during a single ocean crossing. On top of that, modern weather routing technology has made ocean crossings dramatically safer than they were even 20 years ago. Before a ship crosses an ocean today, routing teams analyze satellite weather data, storm systems, wave heights, wind patterns, and ocean currents in real time. Because even though container ships are remarkably stable, the ocean is still one of the most violent environments on Earth. And there is one phenomenon in particular that terrifies even the most experienced captains. Everything we have talked about so far makes container ships sound almost indestructible. Low center of gravity, powerful righting moment, flexible hull, weather routing, cargo securing systems. With all of that working together, what could possibly go wrong? The answer is something called parametric rolling. And if you have never heard of it, you are about to understand why experienced sailors genuinely fear it. Here is what happens. Every ship has a natural rolling rhythm, a frequency at which it naturally sways from side to side, almost like a pendulum. Under normal conditions, waves hit the ship at random intervals, and the rolling stays manageable. But in certain storm conditions, something terrifying can happen. The waves begin to synchronize with the ship's natural rolling frequency. Instead of random hits, the ocean starts hitting the ship at exactly the right moment, so to amplify each roll. And instead of the righting moment bringing the ship back, each wave pushes it a little further, then a little further, then further still. Within seconds, a ship that was rolling at a safe 5 degrees can suddenly be tilting at 30, 40, even 50 degrees. Containers collapse, lashing systems fail, crew members are thrown violently across compartments. In extreme cases, parametric rolling has caused ships to lose hundreds of containers in a single event. And the terrifying part, there is no perfect defense against it. The only real solution is experience. A captain who recognizes the early signs and changes speed or heading before the rolling can build. This is why ocean navigation is not just about technology. It is about understanding the ocean itself in a way that no computer has fully mastered. So let's come back to where we started. That image of a container ship in a massive storm, tilting violently, waves crashing across the deck, the entire hull disappearing between walls of ocean. Now you know why it survives. Not because it is indestructible, not because it overpowers the ocean, but because every single centimeter of its design is working together, constantly, invisibly, to keep it upright. A low center of gravity pulling it back from below. A wide hull generating righting force the moment it tilts. A flexible structure absorbing forces that would crack a rigid ship apart. Cargo systems locking thousands of containers into one giant structure. Weather routing keeping it away from the worst conditions whenever possible. And underneath all of it, mathematics. Thousands of simulations run before the ship ever touched water, calculating exactly how it would behave in conditions most people will never experience in their entire lives. A container ship does not defeat the ocean. It survives because engineers spent decades learning how to work with the laws of physics so precisely that even a floating steel city weighing 220,000 tons can ride through a storm without flipping over. To me, that is genuinely one of the most impressive things human beings have ever built. Not because it is fast, not because it is beautiful, but because it works. every single day, in conditions that would destroy almost anything else on Earth. But here is what I want you to think about. If container ships are stable enough to survive some of the most violent storms on Earth, what happens when one of those ships loses all power in the middle of the ocean? No engines, no steering, no stabilizing force, just 220,000 tons of steel, completely at the mercy of the sea. Because what happens next is far more dangerous than most people realize. And that is exactly what we are covering next. If this video made you see the ocean differently, subscribe, because the next one will make you genuinely afraid of it.